And let me be honest on the front end. I've wrestled with this message. I've been thankful in reflecting upon the message we received last week and in thinking about boundaries in this space for us. I ask you pray with me that together we might hear at the Holy Spirit's pace what he would have to say to each of us individually, regardless of age and journey. Today, we talk about boundaries in the space of guarding our finances and making wise decisions. And I recognize that as we talk about money yet again, for many of us, we look at our bank accounts and financial situations, and we wonder to ourselves, man, how in the world did I get here? Debts are piling up and creeping in, or a constant pressure to do more, get more, have more. Can be frustrating and challenging. For some, while you're trying to pay off student loans, not realizing that when you went to school and acquired the loans, pursued the degree, that the degree you were pursuing was not going to pay you a salary that would help you to pay off the loans you used to get the degree. So that's been frustrating and overwhelming. For some families, you're operating on a very tight budget. The cost of gas and inflation hitting so many other places, whether it's at the grocery store, the cost in goods and services. It just seems as though you don't have enough money for the month. And that can be frustrating, and that can be challenging, and that can create stress. And then you add to that we live in a world that is constantly telling us we need more, right? You need more money. You need more stuff. You need more status. And with that messaging that we hear and we receive, somehow, if we're honest, we believe it. Right? So they say you need more. It's like, oh, I do need more, right? They say you need better. It's like, oh, I do need better, right? And they say you need more status. Like, oh, okay, I do need that. And somehow we find ourselves buying into the messaging and making decisions, sometimes because of fear, sometimes because of pressure, sometimes because of a desire to keep up with the Joneses, making decisions that put us in tough financial places. The one thing I hope you hear today is that managing money isn't just about the dollars in your account. It's about what's happening inside our hearts. And if we don't take the time to check where our hearts are, we will find ourselves on a constant cycle of trying to get more, pursue more, have more, keep up with everybody else, which leads to stress and unintentionally moves us farther away from God. So our passage today is coming from Proverbs 22, beginning at verse 26. I want you to hear it, and then I want you to think about it. Hear what the wisdom writer says. Don't be one of those who enter agreements, who put up security for loans. If you have nothing with which to pay, even your bed will be taken from under you. Do you hear it? Don't be one of those who enter into agreements. It's interesting. Some translations highlight enter into agreements for yourself and agreements for others if you don't have the resources to pay it. Because if you don't have the resources to pay it, there is the potential that the consequence could be that even the very bed you sleep on can be taken from you. Here's the basic messaging of the passage. I'll mention it and then talk about it, and hopefully talk about how we overcome as it relates to boundaries. Basic message of the passage is something that you've probably heard before, right? Here's the first major message of the passage. Don't purchase things you can't afford. Right? Anybody heard that? Heard that, right? Say it another way. Live within your means. Right? Right? Okay. So and here's the other basic messaging of the passage. Don't sign up to help other folk purchase stuff they can't afford. Right? That's the basic messaging of the passage, right? So now, are any of those two things anything most of us haven't heard before? Have most of us heard both of those things? Okay, so most of us have heard both of those things, and yet the reality is, even though we've heard them, can we be honest? Just wiggle your toe. Wiggle your toe if you find yourself every now and then purchasing things you can't afford. We'll talk about it. I know, because in your mind, you're like, I can afford it. We'll talk about it, right? So the question becomes, what causes us to do stuff like that? So let's talk about the first one, not purchasing things we can't afford, right? We all want to live comfortably, but too often we stretch ourselves thin financially, and we just have to raise the question, why would we choose to violate this principle? Well, one of the reasons that we often choose to violate the principle of don't purchasing things we can't afford or living beyond our means is because we haven't learned to deny ourselves immediate gratification. So there's a sermon I preached a long time ago entitled, Don't Feed the Pig. Pig stood for personal immediate gratification, right? Because most of us have not learned how to tell ourselves no, right? We're like the little kid. There is a reason that the Snickers bars are placed in the checkout aisles right before you check out, right? There's a reason that bag of chips are there and that soda's there that costs more for one than if you bought a six-pack. There's a reason that it's sitting right there at the checkout aisle, right? Here's what they know. They know that most of us can't tell ourselves no. So they like, let us position it here. It's going to catch their eyes. Once you catch their eyes, in their minds, they're going to think, ooh, a Snicker would taste real good right now. Then they're going to start tasting Snicker all in their mouth. And before they know it, they're going to be put the Snicker on the belt, right? So why would we do it? Because oftentimes we have an inability to deny ourselves gratification, right? But also we violate this simple rule, let's be honest, because we have a pressure to project and maintain an image, right? That's why we post. That's why we post. We're projecting an image. This is who I want you to think I am, whether it's who I really am or not, right? So oftentimes our desire to project an image will cause us to pay for stuff that we really can't afford, but our image is so important, it's like, I'll figure out a way. Y'all got quiet. Right? So why we purchase things we can't afford? Oftentimes we're optimistic about the future, right? Well, I'm going to just put it on the credit card because I'll be able to pay it next month. Really? You know what's getting ready to happen in the next 30 days. We're optimistic about the future, right? In our minds, everything is going to go the way that it's been, and as a result, we're going to have the resources to pay that extra, right? That we got to pay because we put it on the credit card. So we're optimistic about the future, so it causes us to be like, I can splurge because I'll be good next month. And then we often do it because of a lack of understanding, right? We don't think about the fact that when I pay $100 for something using my credit card that's at a 20% interest rate, I'm actually paying $120 for it. And then if I don't pay it off, I'm going to pay more, right? Or if I purchase a car, and because in the negotiating they know what they're doing, they get me focused on the monthly payment and not the total payment. So because I'm focused on the monthly payment, I just want the monthly payment to be in a certain range, but they charging me 12% for this used car, right? So now I paid $25,000, and because I wanted to stretch it out to get the monthly payment, now it's 5-6 years. Even though I paid $25,000 for the car, by the time I paid the car off, I paid $35,000 for the car that was depreciating the moment I drove it off the lot. So can we just all acknowledge that we struggle with that? Come on, let's just tell the truth. Yep, let's tell the truth. Safe place, right? So living within our means can feel impossible, especially with inflation, low wages, a system that often exploits the poor, right? But small changes can make a difference. So we heard some of those last week from David, right? A simple budget. A simple budget. Can you just say budget? All right, so we can say it. And you said it in church, so it's not a cuss word. Right? It's not a cuss word, right? Right? Budget. So trying to place ourselves on a budget. A budget is telling my money where to go. Because I realize it's not my money. I'm a steward of it. It's God's money. So I want to tell God's money where to go. That's what a budget is. It's saying, I'm going to tell you before I get you where you're going to go. I'm not going to decide once I get you where you're going to go. I'm going to tell you where you're going to go. And then I'm going to send you where I said you're going to go. Y'all got quiet again. Okay. So one small way is a budget, track our expenses. How do I spend my money, right? How do I spend my money? Set aside small amounts for savings. Everybody needs a savings. Everybody needs a savings. Everybody needs a savings. Everybody needs savings. Start small. Start small. One of the ways I started saving, I'll just tell you, one of the ways I started saving is I just started putting the change in a Ziploc bag in my car. Every time I would get change, I just put it in that Ziploc bag. I get more change, I go to the store, they give me dollars and change, I put the change in that Ziploc bag. And my wife will tell you, that Ziploc bag, I just put them Ziploc bags in the top of my drawer. Put them in the top of my drawer, right? And it's just change. But y'all, change is money. And change adds up, right? So no matter how small, start with some saving, some form of saving, right? Here's another one. What are small steps we can take to create boundaries so that we don't live beyond our means? Here's a small one, but it's a big one. Are you ready? It's a small one, but it's a big one. Are you ready? I know. Online at this point, I have 20% of the congregation who have not turned me off, right? Here's a small one, but it's a big one. Here it is. Differentiate between need I'm not saying me decide for you. You decide for you. What's a need and what's a want? I need to eat. I don't need to eat steak. Come on now. Can I take some of y'all back? Can I take some of y'all back? Bologna sandwich? With a bologna pop-up? Little burn mark in the middle? Right? How many of y'all mustard people? Little mustard on top? Right? Wait. Now, for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, it's all good. I'm going to come back to something you know what I'm talking about. It's all good, right? Now, a few of y'all know about this. It is not the most nutritional sandwich that you could ever have. But some of y'all know what it's like to have a sugar sandwich. I need to eat. I don't have to eat steak. All right? So when we think about it, those are small things. Make a decision between our needs and our wants, right? And learn to live within our means, right? So that's the first major point, to make that distinction, right? To know that, hey, I need to set up boundaries so that I can live within my means, so I can operate within what I make, right? What was the second one? The second one is, not only do I need to make sure that I don't purchase more than what I can afford, but I make sure that I don't sign on for somebody else to purchase what they can't afford, all right? Okay, now, so let's just talk about it, right? when we think about this, right, the passage is talking about don't play it. So why would we sign on for somebody else to purchase something that somebody told them they can't purchase on their own? Right? Because that's basically what it is. Somebody else said, based on us looking at what you've done, you can't do this on your own. So we say, okay, well, I think I can help you do that, okay? So let's talk about some reasons why we do it. I think one of the reasons we do it is we don't want to disappoint people we love, right? It's the pressure of relationship. I love you, and I want you to be able to have what you think you need or whatever, and because I love you, I don't want to disappoint you, right? And because I don't want to disappoint you, and I say, okay, I'll do it, right? Or, right, I want to avoid guilt because I know if I tell you no, you're going to be looking at me all crazy, right? And I don't want to feel guilty, right? Because you know, well, you all's family may not be like this, right? But some families, they tell everybody, right? Because they've decided what your finances look like. Then since they've decided what your finances look like without looking at your finances, they've decided what you should be able to afford to do. And since they've decided what you should be able to afford to do, they can't understand why you won't just do what you should be able to afford to do based on what they decided. Is that making sense to anybody? Right? So because of that dynamic, it's like, I don't want to get caught up in all of that. So since y'all think I can do it, then, all right, I'm going to just go ahead and do it, right? Now, here's another reason we do it, right? Because we have overconfidence in them. We're overly confident, right? They come to us, we love them, we want the best for them, right? And they're like, hey, man, I just need a little help. This time I need a little help. And we're overly confident, right? In our minds, it's like, there's no way in the world you're not going to pay me back even though you didn't pay your mama back. Right? Because we too tight. Like, you my cousin. Like we grew up like brothers and sisters. Like, there's no way in the world that you won't pay me back because you love me too much. Even though you haven't paid back other people you love a whole lot. So we're overconfident in the fact that somehow their interaction with us will be different from their interaction with others. Here's the other reason I think we do it. We underestimate consequences. Because we're overconfident, then we never imagine they're not going to pay it. So when people call us and say, you have been listed as a cosigner for this particular item, and as a result, you currently owe us. And our minds are like, they didn't pay that? Right? Because in our minds, it's like, there's no way in the world they would have put me in that situation, and now the consequences are coming to bear. So what do? How do we set boundaries in this space? Because can we acknowledge this is not easy? Anybody? Come on. Right? That's the balance, right? I mean, because we love our family, right? And man, we want to help, right? So here's how we maybe can set some boundaries. If you can afford to give without expecting repayment, give it. If you can afford to give without expecting repayment, give it. Just do it. Right? So it's not that I can't. It says, you know what, I'm not going to play that, right? I'm not going to play that game. I got it. I'm going to give it. It's all good, right? In my books, I write it off as a gift. It's all good, right? If you can do that, give it and be done with it, right? But if you can't, say no. Here's an important point maybe for about 3 people. If your relationship with an individual can't withstand you saying no, you already have an unhealthy relationship. Right? If we're in a relationship and I can't tell you no, this is unhealthy. This is unhealthy, right? Here's another potential way. If you can't cover the consequences if someone defaults, don't sign. So sometimes we can sign and say, hey, I got it. I'm going to sign. I'm going to make this commitment, right? And I make the commitment knowing I'm prepared to cover you defaulting. I'm prepared to cover you default. I'm going to encourage you not to default. I'm going to support you so you don't default. But I am prepared to cover you not defaulting. Why? Because I've thought through it, I've read the fine print, I paid attention to the details, and I have what it takes to make sure that if you default, it's covered. If I don't have that, I got to tell you no. I know these are hard boundaries, right? So at this point, I realize I'm down to 5% who are still tuned in. So let me just talk to you from this perspective. Pastor, I hear you, but what do I do if I've already made these mistakes, right? I've already been in a place where I've been living beyond my means. I've already created a cycle, a pattern where I consistently overspend. I don't have any restraint. I don't know how to tell myself no. I'm just already in this place where I'm upside down. What do I do? What I do in this place? Here's the first thing I'm going to tell you to do. Know that there is no hole that you have dug yourself into that God can't get you out of. That's what I want you to hear. I want you to hear there is no hole that you have dug yourself into that God cannot get you out of. Please know that no matter how bad it is, and hear me, I'm not talking about God just wiping away the consequences. No. I'm talking about God working with you as you turn to him and as you begin to take the steps that you need to take in order for you to get out of that hole. It's going to be long, it's going to be hard, it's going to be challenging, but there is no hole that you've dug yourself into that as you turn to God, God can't help you get out of. All right? Now, again, we don't talk about money. For those of you who are not African American, please know in many of our families, we don't talk about money, right? That's not to throw our business out. That's just how we roll. We don't talk about money. We don't air our business about money, right? So a lot of times people don't know. But for testimonial purposes, if there's anybody in the room who dug yourself into a hole, and by God's grace and you're partnering with him, he helped you get out of the hole, I just want to ask you to stand. Praise God. There's your evidence. There's your evidence. Thank you so much for your testimony. You may be seated. There's your evidence. I just want you to be able to see real life people who have said, I've been there, I've done it, but God got me out of that thing. Here's the second thing I want to tell you. The second thing I want to tell you is don't you allow the enemy to use your past to beat you down. The Bible says that Satan is an accuser of the brethren. What he wants to do is to come and attack you. See, you not all that, you this, you that, you not valuable. There's no way God gonna listen to you. Lies, lies, lies from the pit of hell. God loves you with an everlasting love. And God will never turn his back on you. He will not leave you. He will not forsake you. God is with you, and he's more than the world against you. So don't you believe the lies of the enemy that God is not with you. Everybody make mistakes. God knew you would make mistakes, but God is still working on your behalf to help you overcome what you've done. So you get the enemy back that bat, and you tell him to go back to hell where he came from. Last thing I'll tell you in this space is to start where you are with God. God, you know, it is what it is. What we gonna do? What we gonna do, God? What steps? They tell me you'll order my steps. What steps you want me to take? They tell me not to trust in me, God, but to trust in you with all my heart, to lean not to my own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge you, and you'll direct my path. God, that's what they told me. I know I ain't do it before, God, but you got my attention. You got my full attention now, God. God, what we gonna do? How we gonna navigate this thing so we can get out, so I can be a testimony like them other folk who stood up? Right? Why? Because we understand that what we do with our money, it's really not about money. It's about our heart. So I'm getting ready to shut it down. Where we are with our money is an indicator of where our heart has been. Jesus talks about the fact that love for money, commitment to money, loyalty to money is the great competitor of the heart. So once you see, man, this is what it looks like for me to put money in God's place. Then once you see it, we change it. And say money is just a tool that God has given for me to utilize for his glory. I made the mistake of seeing the tool as my source, but it was just a resource. God is my source. Right? So now that I see where my heart has been, I want to realign my heart with my source. So every time I'm tempted, right, because of all those things going on, maybe it's fear, or I'm tempted because I want to look a certain way or appeal a certain way to other people. When I'm tempted, God, remind me of you being my source. Remind me, God, that it's not about what man thinks of me, but it's about what you think of me, God. Remind me, God, that I don't have to be concerned about, God, keeping up with the Joneses, God. I got a race to run that you gave me to run, and my race is different from everybody else's race. So, God, I just want to be able to run my race. See, it's just to say, hey, my heart was out of alignment. I want to realign my heart with God and say, God, because you are at the center of my world, then I surrender. I surrender. So here's where we are. Come on, y'all. It's time to come to the altar. It's time to come to the altar. Here is the essence of the song. If you need God to alter you, to change you, you come before him and you say to him, God, I ain't got nobody else. You know where I am. You know what it looked like. God, you know how bad it is. I ain't got nobody else, God. So I'm going to stay right here in your presence until you do a change in my head and a change in my heart, God, so that I can live the life you want me to live. Because this is not what you have for me, God. This is the lie I bought into, but now I see it as a lie. And because I see it as a lie, I choose to walk in truth and not walk in lies. Thank you, oh God, for the truth that sets me free. So I want to be free today in you. It's time to come to the altar.